Alright, so today I'm going to be doing rear brake pads on my 2013 Fiat 500. This same procedure applies to all 2012 and newer Fiat 500s, including the Abarth. The reason I'm upgrading, this car only has about 4,000 miles on it. I just don't like how the ceramic pads work with brake balance. So, I'm going to be putting in some EBC Ultimax pads. These are carbon Kevlar. So your brake pad box and what it comes with might vary a little bit. Mine came with obviously 4 pads, 2 per side. EBC, I don't know if anybody else does this. This is a break-in coating. I think it's kind of a gimmick, but it doesn't hurt anything. Also comes with shims. These are usually pre-installed on the pad. Not sure why they don't install them. It may or may not come with some grease. I usually keep a tub of this handy anyway. At this point in the job, it's probably smart if you have some gloves to put those on, because it does get a little bit messy. Hopefully disposable ones, because this usually ruins them. So, step 1, remove the lugs and take the wheels off both sides. Okay, so now that you have the wheels off both sides, if you're just doing pads, the procedure is pretty darn simple. If you're doing pads and rotors, it's a little different. I'm probably not going to cover that in this one, but to do pads, this is your caliper. There's a bracket and there's a caliper. So the bracket is what this caliper, which is the middle piece here, ends here and here, bolts onto with these 2 guide pins. This is a single piston floating caliper. So this whole piece moves back and forth. These 2 outer red pieces goes along the front, holds the pad. Those stay stationary. That's bolted straight to your knuckle essentially. So what we're going to do next is take this bolt and just zip them out. This is going to cause this and this to get loose from the bracket. It's going to let us pull the caliper straight off. Okay, so here they are. The sliders are now completely free from the caliper. In order to get that out, there's a 13mm on the bolt you take out, and then you're probably going to have to hold this still because it will spin with it. Otherwise, I was able to use a 21mm wrench on the top, but I used a channel lock on the bottom. So just anything to keep that from spinning is fine. We're undoing that, not too much torque on it. At this point, caliper should be loose. Yep, so there it is. You can see our existing pads right in there against the rotor. Again, these are only about 4,000 miles on them, so they're pretty good. See the caliper piston in there, which we'll have to push back in just ever so slightly. If you have very worn brake pads, that's going to be sticking out a lot further, and you'll have to push it in further. I forgot to mention before you start this job, make sure your handbrake is off. It's very imperative. So at this point, I'm going to take the old pads out with any remaining hardware. I'm going to wipe it down with soapy water, paper towel, and I'm going to come back and show you how to push this piston back in. So right now, I've got my large channel lock, got one of the jaws behind on the bolt, now I've got one on the front piston, and I'm just going to squeeze this probably for a good 10-15 seconds. You might not see much movement in this case just because the piston is so far, or sorry, has not moved very much from factory because the pads I took out were basically new. But if you have more worn pads, again, that's going to be sticking out further and you will see more movement. What we're doing here is just allowing for the space in this area here to hold 2 brake pads and the thickness of the rotor. Now at this point, I'm going to install the shims and I'm going to grease the pads. You can see here in the factory pad, there is a shim on it. Not quite as substantial as the EBC, but these vary. A lot of them are adhesive backed. These just snap right on. So, sorry, it's hard to film, and so yeah, just start with the 2 teeth and then snap it down over the back. These are carbon Kevlar pads. So they should be giving me a lot more initial pedal bite, but they are going to give a lot more brake dust as well, which I'm fine with. I pull a lot of trailers with my Fiat, so it's nice to have reassuring brake pedal feel. So there are the shims installed. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to have to put the camera down for, but use either the included grease or something like that, synthetic or caliper grease. And what you're going to want to do at a minimum is grease around here, sorry my hand's getting in the way, and around the top of here. The reasoning behind this is these are all the areas where the pad moves on the caliper bracket, and if that's not if that doesn't have a low coefficient of friction, the pads aren't going to wear evenly and you might not get optimal brake performance. You might get a sticking caliper, overheating, reducing fuel economy, stuff like that. So I'm going to grease those areas and then I will come back. Alright, now these look disgusting, but truth be told, the more grease you get on the back of these pads, the better. Don't get it on the friction material or anywhere near it, because that will cause problems. But anywhere on the cast iron backing, you can put grease, you'll be better off. Reduce squealing, better lubrication, things like that. So, pads on the right, pads on the left, doesn't really matter which side. The only thing that does matter is the tab with the pad goes inboard, so facing the middle of the car. And the pad without the tab is on the outside. So I'm going to put these in the bracket now, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Alright, so here are our EBC Ultimax Carbon Kevlar pads, sitting in the factory shims, which are still in great condition, on the caliper bracket. So next step will be to get the outside teeth of the caliper on first, then the back of the piston. Oof. And again, I'll set the camera down for this because it does take some force. Actually, I have to kind of back up a step. I was wrong. I'm used to working on BMWs where you just push the piston back in with a channel lock. However, I was noticing while putting this back on there wasn't enough clearance. So I remember this from my old Honda days, where you take a needle nose pliers or equivalent, you get them inside these, you go ahead and turn it from your perspective clockwise, and the piston will turn back into the cylinder of the caliper. So now it spun pretty easily and it retracted, so we should have plenty of clearance to get these over the pads. Alright, so there you can see our new heavily greased pad. There are the pads sitting against the rotor. I went ahead and reinstalled and retightened these. And at this point, you can move out of the other side and repeat the entire process. Once you're done, back together, wheels on. I torqued mine to 78 foot-pounds. Not really sure what the spec is, but the lug bolts are the same size as cars I torque with that. It seems fine. The first couple of pedal pumps you do inside the car will be terrifying because the pedal's just going to go to the floor while the piston resets against the pad. So just do it while the engine's running and while the car's not moving. Just give it a couple of good pumps and you'll feel the pedal firm up almost immediately. Once you've done that, bed in the brakes, Google for your favorite procedure. It's pretty controversial. I personally like to go late at night on a highway, get up to about 65 miles an hour, brake hard down to 30, accelerate back up to 65, brake hard to 30, do that 4 or 5 times, and then drive for 15-20 minutes without stopping just to make sure that the pad material doesn't deposit on the rotor. After that, all that red braking material should be gone from the pad and you should be good to go.